Hello and welcome to the Blood Reds morning stream. I'm joined by my fellow Liverpool.com writer Dave Comerford, and today we're going to talk a little bit about injuries. And for once, it's going to be positive news about injuries. Obviously, against Everton, we saw the return of Roberto Firmino and Diogo Jota, which is a much needed boost. Virgil van Dijk was also on the bench. How important are those returnees, Dave, at a key period of the season as well?
Well, I think it's like you say, Ben. It's changing the mood around the club. It's been for such a long period now. It feels like players, dropping out, and the squad becoming thinner. But now, at last, it seems to be heading in the right direction. And I think, if we're going to look at the situation generally before we look at kind of specific cases, it feels like you need those players to come back. You need something resembling your strongest side, at least, with everyone in kind of specialist roles. If you're going to be able to put a run together to mount an assault on the top four. So I think that's how I'm looking at it. Our best hope of finding the kind of form that we need to kind of muscle our way in there is by having players like Van Dijk back, by having the attack and depth back. Obviously, it's a shame that we've lost Thiago midfield at the same time, and it seems like we can't really kind of hit on that kind of perfect formula. But we're definitely getting closer. So I think in tandem with the win against Everton, it just makes you feel a little bit more optimistic generally for the weeks ahead.
Yeah, derby victory certainly helps to lift the mood. I was looking at data on Jota and Firmino in particular, and the last two seasons, they've been Liverpool's best finisher statistically, not just in terms of goals per 90, but in terms of getting their shots on target. So in terms of Liverpool, who have sort of struggled to score goals, especially since the start of the year, how crucial is that as well, that you have, Firmino and Jota, who have statistically goals per 90, scored the most goals as well?
Well, I think it's interesting with Jota because, it's obviously heavily coloured by injuries, but, you look at his last goal for the club, I'm pretty sure it was in the 2-2 draw against Man City last season in that Premier League game, which I think was like April 2022. So you're actually, for various reasons, coming up to a year now without a goal from him. And I guess with Firmino, he's actually been in the early part of the season. He was actually one of our highest scorers. I think he's on 9 goals after sort of 21, 22 appearances. So he's more of a threat, I think, than we expected him to be. But I don't necessarily look at it and think of the output per se. I think it's more to do with, like we saw the other night, really having the options off the bench to change a game is really encouraging. And I think also, for Nunez and Gakpo, it's more of an incentive in a way, and it's kind of creates a dynamic you want in a squad where they know that if they don't perform, if they're not putting the numbers up, then they've got kind of those elite level options behind them who can come into the side. So that's more how I look at it, and I think as well, obviously, there's the rotation factor. I think we're about to go back to kind of 3 games a week, certainly with that Real Madrid side coming up. So you're going to want to maybe move things around more and not put too much on certain players in terms of fatigue and them or putting them at risk of injury too. So that's how I kind of see the main benefits of the situation. Although obviously the stats are there to prove that they are going to inflate our goal scoring threat too.
Yeah, and I think as well, I do agree with the rotation thing as well, but I think possibly something that hasn't really been mentioned, but Klopp's been talking about in his press conferences, the fact that he needs forwards who can press from the front and, defend from the front. And, I'm going to bring up the stats, but when it comes to the statistics, it's Jota and Firmino who are far and above the current options Liverpool have in attack in terms of pressing and winning defensive duels up front. So I think that as well, that's going to be key, especially I think probably not in games like against Everton, but against tougher opposition, like you mentioned, the Real Madrid tie. I think that's going to be crucial.
Yeah, definitely. And he's, like you say, he talked about it. He seems to have identified it almost as one of the big problems this season while everyone else has been focused on the midfield. I think Firmino, certainly a specialist at that, probably one that you'd want other players in the squad looking up to. And Jota as well. His work rate, I remember that game against Manchester City. in the Premier League in October. I think Don he got injured at the end, but he gave absolutely everything in that game, and he was brilliant defensively. So it's certainly good to have them back from that standpoint. And I think as well, you look at it and you've got Nunez, not faulting his work ethic at all. Similar with Gakpo, but it's not just about kind of application. It's about kind of knowing when to press, how to press, things like that. And because Nunez has been here half a season, Gakpo's only been here a few weeks, it's going to be just naturally harder for them to execute that. Jota and Firmino are much more used to what Klopp demands. So, yeah, I think if you're looking at it from the off-ball standpoint as well, it's another boost, and that's certainly another dimension to it.
I know you mentioned rotation, but what do you think is Liverpool's best attack? So if you were to pick, let's say Jota is fully fit, Firmino is fully fit, and we're facing Real Madrid next week, who would you go out with in terms of the front three, or potentially even a front four? We've seen Klopp sort of deploy a front four as well at times this season.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting from that standpoint because, I remember Ancelotti was talking after the final about how Liverpool are a little bit predictable. Could Klopp maybe then, prompted by that, spring a bit of a surprise? Could he, hit them with 4 attackers? That could be the kind of bold strategy that we need. I mean, it's difficult. It's strange. If Diaz was in there, I think it'd be a lot more clear cut. I'd say sort of Salah, Nunez, Diaz would be my preference. I'd still say Salah and Nunez. Then you're looking at kind of who you want on the left. Is Gakpo kind of the first choice option? I mean, encouraging signs, but I'm not quite sure yet. So I don't know. I think you've got to see what condition Jota is in, I suppose, against Newcastle. I mean, it probably come a bit too early for them. So I think it probably would still just about be Salah, Nunez and Gakpo for Real Madrid, just at this stage, the timelines really. Firmino, kind of hard done by there because he's had a really good season, and maybe we'll see, him do the middle, Nunez on the left, something like that too. That's obviously an option for Klopp as well. So it is a really difficult one, to be fair. And obviously then you have the added thing of who plays, if it is Nunez and Gakpo, who goes through the middle, who goes out wide. And obviously they can rotate within a game too. So that's my expectation. And I think right now I'd probably just about say that is the right way to go.
I think that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of a little bit more optimistic about Real Madrid now. It seemed very sort of like a gloomy tie when it was, the start of January and there were so many injuries. But Real Madrid's form has sort of been not so great by their standards, at least. Barcelona are running away with La Liga at the moment. And like you mentioned, Ancelotti talked about the predictability aspect of Liverpool. I think right now what we can certainly say is Liverpool is not a very predictable team in terms of results, and we've got the options as well now to sort of rotate and surprise Real Madrid and give them something they don't necessarily expect, and I think that gives Liverpool a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I think as well, almost dysfunction can be kind of your ally in a way too. You look at this Liverpool team this season, sometimes it has been hard to see kind of the blueprint there, so it may be a little bit harder to pin down in a way. It's not kind of the Liverpool formula that we were seeing year on year. It has kind of changed and become a little bit harder to pinpoint, I'd say. And I think Nunez is a huge part of evolving, because whilst he is very much rough around the edges and has kind of missed an awful lot of chances this season, he has given Liverpool the opportunity to play a different way, and that is the kind of factor I think we need against Real Madrid. We are very clearly the underdogs going into this tie, but we do have players who can, to use that expression again, who can kind of create chaos, who can kind of unsettle Real Madrid. And I think it wouldn't surprise me, to be fair. It's a totally different match, but if we kind of see a similar game to what we saw against Everton, in a way where Liverpool almost make it a little bit frenetic, really, especially without Thiago, are we going to turn it into one of those kind of 2017-18 style Champions League games where we're just kind of trying to smother the opposition, all over them, intensity, things like that, and stop Real Madrid from playing their game and try and turn it into kind of a dogfight at Anfield? Could that be what it ends up being? So So yeah, I definitely think it is going to be a very different test for Real Madrid to what they faced at the end of May in that Champions League final. You know, it's for positive reasons in terms of Nunez, but also in terms of this Liverpool team has just kind of turned into a little bit more of a become a little bit more chaotic, but maybe in a strange way that we'll be able to use that to their advantage.
Yeah, and of course as well, I think probably one of the most important returnees is Virgil van Dijk. We'll see if he's going to be fully fit to start that game, but if he is, then wow, that is a huge boost to have him back in the starting 11.
Yeah, I think, obviously Van Dijk's not had his best season, but you've probably seen his value more so now that he's out the team. I think obviously Matt Tips really struggled. People probably thought he would play better in Van Dijk's stead. So yeah, you have that, and I think that's going to be quite important to set pieces too. I mean, Liverpool's set piece record was heading in the wrong direction before Van Dijk got injured, but it's certainly become a lot more of a prevalent problem since. So you have to have that organizer back. I think it is definitely a boost, and you certainly want your defensive talisman for a game like that. And then I think it's interesting, who's going to be alongside him, because the Kanate timeline, I think it was kind of would he be able to make that first against Real? I mean, I would have thought probably not at this point. So then you're looking at kind of Joe Gomez, and what a huge game it will be for him. Coming into season the fourth straight centre back, then playing Real Madrid in the kind of Champions League round of 16. For a player who's been inconsistent all season, you just wonder, are you going to get kind of the really high sort of 8, 9 out of 10 levels you've seen in a few games, probably including both the games against Everton, for example, and against Manchester City too, or is it going to be the player who kind of has a shaky start and then that kind of goes through him the whole game? So yeah, I think it is probably going to be that Van Dijk and Gomez partnership, and hopefully it can kind of be the version that we saw in kind of 2018 and 2019 when they were imperious together.
Let's hope so. And I think one thing for sure is we're definitely heading into that game with a lot more positivity than probably a week ago, especially with the derby win and with all the key returnees. I think that about wraps it up for today, though. Thanks, Dave, for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And as always, do check out the rest of the Blood Red content going out today and all the written content on Liverpool.com as well.